Jimmy White, thanks for coming in today, brother.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate the opportunity to have you come into the C-suite. And you laying some very serious groundwork here in Chattanooga. And I love the Riverfront. I love the idea of the Bend, River Bend. It is what makes the city the city.
Yeah.
And so in an area where we have in our past is like from an investment banking standpoint. I was an investment banker with UBS, and then before that, and then I was on the retail side. So I've done private funding, and I know you did some of that in South Florida. But shortly after we moved to Chattanooga, Harry was born and we came back. I came back with her, and George Scomberg down at UBS. He was like, "Take my boat. I'll take your wife out for her birthday." And it was my first time being on the river, and I was like, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
Like, this is totally different being on the water. And you got to be careful. And let me tell you why. Not because you might accidentally buy a boat, but because you might accidentally start looking for real estate on the water. Okay. And which we did. And I'm glad we did. Every day's a different experience when you can just look outside and you're just like, right?
Absolutely.
But as it's been described to me, you have the crown jewel. And it's going to be when it's through your profile, you see words like landmark, right? Like fingerprint and legacy, and this isn't self-described. This is how the media is describing this project and this opportunity that you have. And I guess what's that mean to you?
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility to get it right. It's but our partnership took that mentality from the day we bought it. We it's our last piece of downtown Riverfront, right? So, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today had it not been for, the Lupton family having the vision with the aquarium and our downtown Riverfront, right?
Right.
Our downtown was, when I grew up in Chattanooga, was not a great place to be, and it took the foresight of the family, the city, the county, everybody come together and said, "Hey, look, this is not the highest and best use for our riverfront. Let's reimagine this. What can we do to change that?" And so, yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the Bend, it's it's maybe 2.0 of that, right? We've got twice as much riverfront. It's attached to the downtown core. When you think about Market, Broad, and Chestnut as they head towards the aquarium, we own the end of MLK, Main, and 19th Street.
Yeah.
Turn of the century industry. Was built around the riverfront, industrial, manufacturing. Where the aquarium sits today, world bottling plants, combustion engineering, one of the major employers here in the city. My wife's grandfather worked there. My grandmother worked at DuPont. I mean, those were major, major employers here in town. And so, yeah, I feel a huge responsibility to get this project right. It's not our vision. We opened up the doors to the city of Chattanooga and say, "Hey, what are we missing as Chattanoogans? What do we need here?" We heard things about, more bars and restaurants and entertainment and things like that along our riverfront, more boating opportunities, an outdoor amphitheater, for music and things like that. And so, we had 1,200 people show up for a public charrette. We had public input from day one. We've tried to be good stewards of that property and make sure we build a quality project for the city of Chattanooga. We're literally connecting the last piece of our downtown riverfront to the city.
And all driven by a theme and people first, best use.
That's right.
Right. That's the mantra.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, we could have made a lot of money going in there, cut 2 roads in, build a bunch of luxury townhomes, a bunch of boat slips, private boat slips, and called it a day. But when you look at the legacy, if you will, for our city, and the highest best use for our waterfront, the job creation, the park space, the partnership with the new downtown school, the partnership with the affordability in CHA, we've really structured a deal that hopefully, because it's really not about us, it's about those future generations, will enjoy for forever. So that's the exciting part. But there's a huge responsibility with that, right? I mean, there's opportunities to take other deals there that maybe financially will benefit the partnership, but at the end of the day, it's probably not the highest and best use for that land. So, there's always opportunities that come to you, and I think that's the biggest responsibilities we have as developers is choosing the right ones, the right partnerships, the right other developers to partner with on projects.
So, I had Ken DeFore on, and Ken talked about how hard it was in Chattanooga to get TIFs.
Yes.
and it is a pivotal part of growth, and opening the window for people that have like the knowledge, the background, the resources to you to come in, and I guess it probably accelerates the project, but also probably makes it grander in scope. Am I right?
Yeah, yeah. So there's TIF has gotten kind of a bad rap, I think, here in Chattanooga. They're used everywhere, all over the country. I don't know how many Nashville does, but it's a lot, right? And again, I think whenever you're talking about public infrastructure, public projects, public partnerships, TIFs are a great avenue. Pilots, another form of tax incentive, but there's different kind of TIFs. The TIF we did at the Bend was a first of its kind, right? I mean, it took 18 months to put together, and it was the city, the county, state, everybody working together to pull this off. CHA was involved. We called it the One West Side, which is again, talking about the affordable housing component with CHA, talking about the new downtown school with the county. So we worked a deal with CHA to provide some of the tax increment to help support them and their redevelopment. Again, the Bend is not just for the elites in Chattanooga, it's for everyone. Basically, as we create that tax increment, some of that increment has been allocated to CHA to help support them. They just got awarded a $50 million federal grant, to help where their development is too. That's been approved, that's funded, and so development's already started there, which is great. The new downtown school, a certain portion in addition to what is allocated towards education through the TIF. We've allocated even more dollars towards the new downtown school, which will hopefully have some vocational trade school component, which will help support the jobs that are already at the Bend, and future jobs to come. So it's really exciting. And it was the first sales tax TIF ever done in state history. And so,
Interesting.
it took a lot of moving pieces to put that together. And it's a developer-backed TIF, so that, different from the stadium TIF, and that, taxpayers are putting some of the upfront costs into the stadium deal. In this case, we're paying for all the initial infrastructure with the hope of being paid back someday through tax increment and sales tax.
That's strong. Important to differentiate the fact that this has no correlation and is not related to the project between the stadium moving from where it's at to the location where the foundry was.
Correct.
Zach Womp's got a problem with the new stadium deal. The numbers keep moving, and I don't know how I haven't got invested in his argument. He seems to be a steward for the county, but it seems like he feels like the wool's kind of being pulled over the county and what the funding's being done. Do you agree with his argument, or do you want to comment on it?
No, I mean, look, we looked at the stadium project before it went to the U.S. Pipe. I think, we talked to him initially, and of course, we started focusing on jobs, right? We didn't really need an anchor. We had the big blue building, which now houses Novonics. We had about 1 million square feet of buildings to fill, with 3 people working there. Now there's, roughly 850 to 1,000, which
Wow.
is exciting. But, we had anchors, and it was tough for us to figure out, how to make a stadium deal work there. But, at the end of the day, U.S. Pipe site had been sitting there longer. It needed an anchor. Would I have chose a minor league baseball stadium? I don't know, probably not. But, but again, it's going to be a good anchor there. For me, it's more of a philosophical question, not necessarily the stadium. Is it a good investment? Will they find other uses if minor league baseball goes away? I think mine is more from a sports perspective. Having played college golf and professional golf for a while, I look at NIL deals and I say, how much longer is single A and double A ball going to be around, period?
Seriously.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Great question.
Yeah. If I'm a kid coming out of high school and University of Tennessee is going to pay me $5,000 a year to go play baseball, and I get to hang out with my friends and travel and get better and improve my draft status. Or, hey, the Mississippi Mudcats are going to pay me $1,500 a month, and I got to go sit on a bus with 32 dudes. What am I going to do, right?
It's an easy choice.
It's an easy choice, right? And so the more exposure college baseball is getting, college football is getting right now, the younger athletes are getting more and more attention, even in high school now. I think, NIL's here to stay. I think it'll evolve, but I think sports like, minor league baseball are going to suffer.
So we'll go back to profile in a second, I was a Division I college athlete as well, and so I have questions because
Yeah.
I'm not at your level, but I'm like I've got lots of questions for. I mean, I'm sure the audience is going to be curious, but I'm curious what it's like at that elite level when you're all SEC academic, by the way.
Yeah.
You weren't there to abuse the the athlete and rock and jock. I mean, you were there and you were hitting the books, which is probably a testament to the success that you have right now. The Bend, to go back to the Bend for a second,
Sure.
what's the history of the Bend? Let's get into that a little bit more. Like going back to earlier,
Yeah.
When I'm on the boat and I'm going by and there was like this massive structure, and I was asking one of my buddies that was at Chattanooga, and I was like, what was that for? He's like, well, they used to make hulls here for nuclear submarines, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
But before I even all saw him, like, what was sort of the history as Chattanooga's evolved from the industry that was down there, kind of earlier in Chattanooga's industrial base?
Yeah, so combustion engineering, I think, started in used to be H&W prior to that in the late 20s, and then became combustion engineering in the I think it was the late 30s, early 40s. But combustion engineering was big in World War I, World War II. Big partnerships with TVA and building all the dams, and so they made boilers, big industrial boilers, ship hulls. The casing for the Hiroshima bomb, for example, was made on site. So, we found a lot of that memorabilia there from combustion engineering when we bought it that we inherited from Alstom and GE. And so we saved all that, to me, it's artwork, right? You find these old engineering drawings that are all hand drawn of these projects.
Right.
Yeah, it's cool. So, so part of our vision is ultimately to have a nod to the history of the site there and have a little, museum, if you will, collection of some of the history there. Because it is really, really cool. I mean, I'm a history guy myself. History always repeats itself, right? So we don't understand history. How can we, and especially with what we're doing in development, right? But anyway, it's a really cool site. There's a lot of really cool features to some of those existing buildings. They don't build buildings like the building that's Nobonics in now, and then we've got Lincoln Electric in another building there. These buildings have 40-foot, 60-foot ceilings, 150-ton cranes. There's a 6,000-ton press in one of our buildings that's still there to this day. That there's a picture of it in the Library of Congress, right? So, I mean, really cool history on that site. And so, we've kept a lot of the steel structures, a lot of those older buildings, and repurposed them, So. But combustion, like I said, 6,000 jobs at one point in time. So major employer. And that was one of our goals setting out day one, was like, hey, we want to recreate these jobs. Hey, can we reach that 6,000 job mark someday?
So you're keeping all of those, but those will stay on the property.
Yes, sir.
What's coming down? Is anything coming down as for development so that you guys can move forward?
Yeah, we took down about 600,000 square feet of older industrial buildings already.
Okay.
And so when you drive by the Bend today, you'll see infrastructure going in, all the utilities, the dirt work, the road infrastructure going in, and you'll see some of those old steel structures. We basically took back the skin and peeled them off, but left some of the skeleton there that we can build off of and give a nod to the history of the site.
So is where the racetrack is?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. And so my car gets worked on at Quick Everett's.
Yeah.
And so I go to Coffee and Cars across the street, and I've not had Byron on, but I know he's a big car fanatic, and I think he's been part of. I know he brought his fundraiser here and has raised money through the car show, and I know that he's kind of partial to the track. Does the track say, or the track goes? Is that?
Yeah, initially we were trying to figure out how to incorporate it into our plans, but when you're building, apartments and condos and amphitheaters and it's been done before, so maybe we'll revisit it later on once we get all the road infrastructure in and everything. But no, it was a great event. It's been a great event. I think the world of Byron and Ken, they've done so much for the city and so much for the West Village. I mean, it's just incredible what they've done there. And the car show's been great. They had to get state legislation changed, to have Vico Auto Auction come here, and that generated, thousands upon thousands of dollars in sales tax for the city and hotel stays and everything. So it was a great event. I hope it stays. Whether or not we incorporate it at the Bend long term, it may be challenging, but anything's possible.
So one of the other recurring themes, and we'll go back to profile now. Growing up in Chattanooga and being a Chattanoogan has, and I think it's all over the research that I've done, is a huge building block or like foundational component to like how you approach development. Am I right in that statement?
Absolutely. I mean, I love this city, right? After college, I was, lived in Jupiter, Florida for a while. Sponsors, golf and everything said, hey, look, you need to go somewhere you can play year round, Scottsdale or Jupiter. And so ended up in Jupiter, and I loved it. I was there for 5, 6 years, and it's a great spot. Started my real estate career there, but yeah, Chattanooga's home. It's a special place. I've traveled a lot, been a lot of different places, been fortunate enough to do that, but this is a great city. I mean, when you look at all the components we have here, proximity to Atlanta and Huntsville and Nashville and the beautiful mountains. I mean, there's only so many places in the world where you can be in a downtown as vibrant as Chattanooga is and then be in these beautiful mountains in 20 minutes, right?
That's right.
And the lakes and rivers. And so it's a great spot, great location. And from a real estate investing standpoint, yeah, I mean, what a better spot? I mean, you've got Nashville and Atlanta that are just boom towns right now, a lot of job creation. The great migration that's happening from the West Coast and the Midwest to no-income tax states like Tennessee, and Chattanooga's getting a lot of benefit of that since COVID. But even prior to COVID, I mean, we've had nice, steady growth, right? We don't see the peaks and valleys that the Miami see and things like that. So, but Chattanooga's home. I love Chattanooga. I love this city. I've may sound corny, but you can't take any of this stuff with you. And at the
That's
end
right.
of the day, and we try to find projects in great locations and reimagine them and breathe new life back into them. The Etny building was a great example of that. We bought into the innovation district, and when we started talking about gigabit infrastructure and things like that, attracting some of these tech companies here, we bought that 100% empty from TVA and then redeveloped that project. King Street Station, where the Moxie is, and Goodfellas and Wise Guys. That was an old abandoned coal storage facility that had a building that burnt down on it, quite literally. It was built in 1913, but again, a great location, great bones. Just needed some reimagining and some TLC, if you will. So those are the kind of projects that I like doing. Not that there's anything wrong with developing Walmarts, but just doesn't get me excited, I guess. And so we take that mentality of, hey, let's go find these projects in great locations, all asset classes, right? And the Bend is an example of that, right? Being an older industrial site was not its highest and best use. And so, but that one, is obviously our largest project. But, at the end of the day, we can't take credit for that design. It was the city of Chattanooga's design. And when I say that, it was the 1,200 people that showed up for the charrette that gave the vision there.
You gave them the buy-in.
Yeah.
I mean, you got them involved.
That's right. That's right. All the concepts that we heard, novel concept, right? Most developers come in and say, hey, I did this project in New Mexico, I did this project in New York. Yeah, it'll fit here in Chattanooga. Let's just go build the same thing, right? We looked at it differently. And you said, look, Chattanoogans are going to be the ones that support this project, right? Why not let your audience design your project for you? And so we look at that every project that we do. Project we're doing in East Ridge right now. Our first meetings were with the town manager and the mayor, and said, hey, what are you guys missing? What do you want to see? Right? Novel. I mean, it's just a different perspective from a development standpoint.
You talking to Kenny and Bob at all in East Ridge? Kenny Custer?
Oh yeah. The city of East Ridge is great. And
Yeah.
what they've done with the border region tax incentive has been incredible, and they've used it better than any other city. And what they've created there. I mean, city in a great location. My grandmother, my mom grew up in East Ridge. Used to be a great place to be, and it had some issues. I think the border region has been a great tool for it to help it grow, and I think East Ridge, Hickson, certain pockets of Red Bank, that's where some of the growth's going to be over the next 5 years.
And forecasting here a little bit. I'm going to have Mark Litchford on in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to talk about incorporating East Ridge and like how he and John Anderson and God rest his soul. He was my big problem attorney. That's what people ask. Who's your attorney, Jimmy? I'm going, I have a small problem attorney, a big problem attorney. I was like, I only go over here when I need to get the bazooka out.
That's right.
But Mark has got an interesting perspective and was involved in that and understands inner workings, and so I'm excited to hear from his perspective and how you put that together and create the kind of opportunity that you're talking about.
Yeah, Mark's a good dude, smart dude,
humble.
Yeah, that's right.
And a pretty good golfer. Yeah, I ran into him at Council Fire. Then
Okay.
he hit his boys in the golf cart with him, and I was like, "You heading out?" And he's like, "Yeah, I was gonna forget. You got me in 2 weeks." Okay. Where was high school?
So I went to Baylor.
It's
Yeah.
Baylor. Okay.
Yeah, I'm first generation going to Baylor. My parents worked 2 jobs to put me through there, but they started recruiting me in third grade to come play golf there.
Really?
Yeah.
And so was the junior championship at Baylor? That was at 95.
So I graduated in '97. I'm dating myself now, but yeah, we won 4 state championships when I was there.
Stop.
Yeah, King Emming was a great man, God rest his soul. But King started following me when I was younger. My uncle played on the PGA Tour. My dad
Didn't know that.
taught golf for a little while, and so anyway, I went to Brainerd Baptist, and I was in third grade, the #1 man on their junior high golf team, and so I got paired against Baylor and beat their #1 man as a third grader. And King was following me around and said, "Hey, look, Jimmy, I know your uncle and your dad," and said, "You got a great golf swing or whatever," but he said, "You're kind of young for a 7th, 8th grader, or you kind of small for a 7th, 8th grader." He said, "Are you a 6th grader playing up by chance?" And I said, "No, sir, I'm in third grade." He's like, "Holy crap, where do you want to go to high school?" In middle school. So they
So
said
he was off by a little bit.
yeah, but they started sending me letters and stuff to come play golf there, and of course I toured them, and it was a great school. I mean, it really was. I mean, it was an eye-opening experience for me. I don't think I appreciated it as much as I should have, but I do now, right? I mean, I got to see Billy Graham come and dedicate the chapel there, and Serb and Hillary give a motivational speech, right? And, Joe Namath show up on a random chapel day, and so, it was a great experience, but yeah, my parents worked hard to let me go there, and my sisters went to Noodlewall. I grew up in Noodlewall back when there was nothing in Noodlewall, but yeah, I mean, it was great, great experience for me, and then of course opened doors for me, and of course ultimately swore I'd never sign with the University of Tennessee, but ended up there, which I loved as well. So
My daughter starts her freshman year at Baylor this
Okay.
year, and so she was at workouts this morning.
Yeah.
And so Sarah Lael is a pivotal person in our life. She's the head coach of the volleyball program down there, and she's been a coach at A5, and that's our club, and that's who we see for our privates. And we were already going there on a regular basis, and then we asked Calista, it's like how would you feel about this opportunity? And I love the fact that we're going to give her the best opportunity, because she says, "Oh, I want to go play in college, Dad."
Yeah.
And all of the resources and all of the things exist there for that opportunity. And so I feel the same way for her for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Now, so when you're the college recruiting process,
Yeah.
what's that like when you're playing? You're winning state championships. When did the colleges start calling? Who else was calling at times besides UT to be like, "Hey, do you want to come?" And where did you go on your visits? Who was number 2 and number 3 in terms of the other schools that you were considering?
Yeah. So again, I was pretty fortunate. I was the #1 recruit in the state, so I had folks looking at me from Auburn was a close second.
Okay.
LSU. I was actually on the phone with the new LSU coach for 4 hours the night before I signed with Tennessee. Yeah, I mean, Tennessee brought in the #1 coach in the country, a gentleman by the name of Jim Kelson, who's still close with me and a great guy. And he used to be at Augusta State, and so I had some buddies that were there. One of my best friends, still one of my best friends, Michael Morrison, played at Baylor with me, and then went to Tennessee and then started recruiting me to come there. And then, ironically enough, after I signed one, he ends up transferring to Georgia, becoming a 3-time All-American there. So, but yeah, no, I mean, Tennessee was great. I mean, I think, it was probably my 3rd or 4th option, maybe, when I started looking at the recruiting process. But they started recruiting me, and I guess as a sophomore, I started to get attention. Yeah, I ended up signing early with Tennessee. Auburn was close. LSU was close. Pepperdine was an option. They'd won the national championship the year before, and My parents were like, there's no way you're going to California.
That campus.
Yeah, I've heard it's beautiful. I never went on a visit, but my parents and I sit in. West Point was another one. My dad was a military guy, so so I laid out all these offers on the table, and vividly remember it and with my mom and dad, and we're like, here are the options. What are we thinking? And nobody picked Tennessee, right? Go figure. Dad was like, West Point looks great, and everybody agreed. Pepperdine's out, right? It's too far away. You're not going to happen. But yeah, no, Tennessee was a great option. We were fortunate in that, we had a lot of great recruits there, a lot of guys that are playing on the PGA Tour right now, that came on board. Kelson was a great recruiter, a lot of international players. We were ranked number 2 in the country my senior year. We were always ranked up there. Won a lot of college golf tournaments, our team did. So it was a lot of fun. You build those lasting relationships with these guys. It's nice to watch, David Skins, who I played with, he's winning and playing on the PGA Tour, and then you've got, Ross McGowan. He's played in the Masters and all over the world. Lives in Dubai, and great player as well on the European Tour. So yeah, it's fun to see those guys succeed. I tried it. Got injured, but the travel and everything. It's a different lifestyle, right? I mean, those guys are on the road 40 weeks out of the year. It's tough to have a family. It's it's a grind, right? When it's funny, when I got to Tennessee. Of course, Doug Dickey, the general, the athletic director, was there at the time, and he called all the scholarships athletes in the Thompson Bowling Arena, and he said, "Hey, look, congratulations, right? You're the top 1% of 1% in your individual fields. You're a D1 SEC athlete, right?
Right.
Everybody's got their chest out, looking around, smiling." And he said, "I want everybody to look around at each other, right? So you can hear a pin drop in there, and all these student athletes are sitting around looking at each other, all the sports, right?" And he says, "All right. Less than 1% of you are going to make it as an athlete, professional athlete. So get an education," and dropped the mic and walked off. It was the most sobering experience for me, right? Because, here you are on the high of being a freshman in college and living the dream and doing what, all this, you've made it, right? And then, boom, less than 1% of you in this room are going to make it as an athlete. So get an education. That stuck with me, right? And so, while I was there, I majored in business and in marketing, and had to take night classes and do that. And a lot of people don't realize the commitment for a student athlete, but it taught me a lot of the values that I use today in my business and in running my business. Right, I use marketing quite a bit. What we do, in the sales
Every
side,
day.
every day. But when I was in school, they didn't have classes for real estate development. I didn't even think about real estate development. It wasn't until after I got injured, living in South Florida, that folks started talking to me about real estate, and that's where I got started.
So, I played football at UCF, and was a preferred walk-on. I didn't get recruited. I went down there because my grandmother said, "Hey, I'll pay for school if you'll come down here, and I'm going to get you a car." And I was like, "I don't know." She said, "Well, there's a 3-to-1 girl-to-guy ratio," and I was like, "Well, when do I show up?" And so I went down, and so I spent a lot of time I met Harry down in Orlando before we came back home, and a bunch of my buddies are from Deerfield, like all the guys at my wedding, Deerfield, Boca, Jupiter.
Yeah.
And so I'm really partial there. We spent a lot of time down there. There's a lot of hair shows down there in the Miami area. Like I've been on stage in Miami, had classes down there, and so I really love that city. After you got out of school, how did you migrate down there? What was the path? Are we in pursuit now for thinking about a PGA career from out of college?
Yeah, absolutely. That was my dream. That was my vision to always play pro golf, and so I had some local support here. Gibby Gilbert was a prolific golfer here. Runner up in the Masters, won countless tournaments, right? And a great guy, and he's like, "Dude, you need to try it, right? I mean, you got the game and all this." And so anyway, he was a big motivator for me to try it. Of course, my uncle, his experience on tour and those kind of things. And then, but yeah, had the option, Tylus was, helping me out and those kind of things, but I got some sponsors together and said, "Hey, look, you got to go to Scottsdale, Arizona." There was a tour out there, and there was a tour in South Florida called Golden Bear Tour in Jupiter. And he played a lot of these mini tours to get ready for Q School. But the first series, I graduated in July. and then immediately thereafter turned pro. And so my first series was that fall in Pensacola area, and so finished third in my first pro event, and cashed a check for I think it was like $1,800. I was like, what have I got myself into, right? You have to go there and shoot like 12 under and 30-mile-an-hour winds on a golf course with, I mean, it was brutal, right? So I'm like, man, I was broke even for the weekend. But it was fun. I finished about 10th on the money list in my first tour, and then I was like, all right, let's go south, and so went to Jupiter, and yeah, I struggled a little bit. It was different. It was really windy. I was used to hit the ball high, and so it was an adjustment, for my golf game, and then. Yeah, I got injured. Like, I vividly remember I was hitting balls one day, and just like went to my knees. I just ruptured disc in my back and all that, and at 24 years old, and I was like, man, where'd that come from?
Lumbar.
Yeah, L5S1, and so, but again, when you're a kid, I say kid, in your early 20s, and you're working out 4 or 5 days a week, and playing golf, and you're active and all that. You're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, right? You don't ever think anything's like that's going to happen to you, especially when you don't have any symptoms of it. But I think with athletes now, I mean, and I think back at Tennessee, when I went into Tennessee, I was 6 foot tall, 155 pounds when I was recruiting, right? After my freshman year, I was 6'3", 195. And when I graduated, I was 6'4", 212, right? With 6% body fat. And
4 inches in college.
yeah. And again, but there, again, it's bigger, stronger, faster, right? And nothing against UT. All the universities are doing it. They're bringing these kids in, and they're but they're bringing new kids in every year, right? And so I think some of the stuff I did there, I'm pulling 70-pound sleds and training with the wide receivers.
That's right.
And cleaning jerks and all that to get bigger and stronger, which, quite frankly, golfers didn't used to do. When my dad and uncle were playing, it was, golfers don't need weights, stay away from weights. But now you see the guys on tour now, like Brooks Koepka, Shambo.
Oh, you play middle linebacker.
Oh yeah, they're huge. And so I was kind of the first entourage class of that, if you will, of
Okay.
making guys bigger, stronger, and faster. So I think that had some impact on me when I turned pro, and a couple years later, having the back issues, getting bigger too fast, and those kind of things. But anyway, it was a blessing in disguise, right? I mean, everything happens for a reason. For me, I think the travel was getting to me, the grind. I mean, I loved golf, still love golf, but at the end of the day, I was like, man, maybe this isn't. I was questioning whether or not this was the right career path for me, and so that decision was made for me, right? And I had some surgery, and then 6 months later, re-ruptured it, and I was like, all right, let's figure out something else. And so my childhood idol as a kid was Greg Norman, and got to know him. And
Did you really?
Yeah, and so Medalist Developments, he had a development company, and he was actually doing a project here with Thunder Thorpe. It's called Tennessee National, right? And so at the time I was dating his head of marketing.
It's on the water too, isn't it?
Yes, it's in Loudon, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And so he said, man, hey, I was standing at his Christmas party. I remember it vividly. He's like, I heard you're having some back issues. I had back issues, He said, what are you thinking about doing? I said, I've got a business degree. He said, hey, I'll look at real estate. I'm doing a project where you're from, in Tennessee. So we had that dialogue. And then another gentleman by the name of Ed Robson, I was working at a golf course at the time, so I had playing privileges. Half the clubs down there in Jupiter, $300,000, $400,000
Equity clubs. Yeah.
And so a lot of us guys that were trying to make it got jobs as working at clubs, right, giving lessons and those kind of things, caddying, doing whatever for playing privileges. And so I met a gentleman that was a member there at MacArthur Golf Club in Jupiter, named Ed Robson. And Ed was a big real estate guy and had a fund and everything. And he started telling me, hey, you need to get into real estate, right? I heard this 2 or 3 more times. I'm like, man, maybe the writing's on the wall. Maybe the good Lord's trying to tell me something here. So I started reading real estate books while I'm sitting at the club, and started taking night classes to get my license. And I ended up working for a gentleman by the name of Dick Sheehan from upstate New York. Just a great guy. He was a military guy, got into real estate, had a great development company down there, great brokerage company, and kind of showed me the ropes, right? And gravitated towards commercial, But yeah, got into real estate down there in 2005 and never stopped. Been doing it ever since.
So you got into M&A down there, right? You guys, was that where acquisitions first came into play, and you're having to work with like investment banks when you're working with hedgies, right? Am I right?
Yeah. So again, through golf, I was fortunate enough to meet a family called the Flynn family, and they were from New York, and they had a quote unquote small fund, and so which I knew nothing about, and so I just got my license, and Miss Flynn said, "Hey, we've got a fund in New York called First Point Partners. David King runs it. Give him a call." And so of course I called David and never got a phone call back, and called Miss Flynn again. I said, "Hey, I'm trying to get in touch with David," and she's like, "He'll call you back in a day," and so he did. But it's funny, I was sitting at my desk, and it's my first real estate deal I ever worked on, right? Just and again, had it not been for golf and these relationships, we'd never have this opportunity. But the first one I worked with was called for Partners, and this is how it happened. So met the Flynn family through golf. They were members of one of the clubs I was working at. I get my license.
You say license. I'm a real estate license.
Real
right?
estate,
Commercial
license,
real
yeah.
estate.
So,
Okay.
so I'm broker.
Right.
I'm a broker at this point.
Okay.
Or not even that. I'm just a sales agent, right? But I'm licensed, and so my first week on the job, my broker, which is Dick Sheehan, my boss gives me a qualifying sheet, right? And he said, never ask somebody what they can spend. You always ask what their appetite is, right? And so it said, under a million to two. 5 million, whatever, on this sheet, and it said, "What kind of real estate are you interested in?" Check a box, residential, commercial, whatever, and so on. And so I've got my little sheet out. I finally get a phone call from David King, and I'm sitting at my computer. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm sitting here checking my boxes, right? And I said, "Well, what's your appetite?" And he says, "Well, our typical deal size is anywhere between 50 and 100 million.
And that wasn't one of your boxes.
I don't have one of my boxes, right? And so he's like, "Do you have anything in that price range?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let me check." And so I pull up my computer screen, and I'm on LookNet or whatever, the search engine, and I find one project in Fort Pierce. It's an international port in the trade zone. And I'm literally reading off the screen because I've just found this. And I said, "Yeah, actually, there's one deal, and it's listed at $80 million, right?" And he's like, just reading the description off the page, he says, "That sounds really interesting. I'm going to be in Palm Beach in a couple weeks.
Okay,
Why don't we go take a look at it?"
Do you understand the gravity at that moment?
No clue, right? I'm panicked at this point because I'm trying to understand, I literally know nothing about real estate. First week on the job, right? And so anyway, long and short of it, he comes down and we go tour this property, and he can tell I'm as green as it gets, right? But, David's a guy that's negotiating against Donald Trump at the time in deals in Manhattan, trying to put stuff together. Yeah. So, blessed in that regard, and that, I had folks like him, a lot of folks like him that helped educate me. But long and short of it, my first ever offer was on an international port in Fort Pierce, Florida, and we made an all-cash offer at $50-something million at the time, $60 million or whatever it was. We didn't get it, but that was my first dive into real estate, right? Immersed into fire, so to speak.
The boss had to be happy.
Yeah, no, it's a funny story. I mean, I walked in his office after tried to qualify this guy, and he's on the phone, he's got his feet up, and he's shooing me away, and he can tell I've got something I got to tell him, and so he waves me in, and he said, "What is it, dude? I just got a phone call. I got busy today." And I said, "Well, I just got off the phone with a potential buyer," and he goes, Yeah. What about it?" And I said, "Well, his appetite is between 50 and 100 million. And of course, he stops and looks at me and says,
"Say it again."
"Yeah, what are you
say it again, Jamie? What did you just say?
Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, I told him who it was. He's like, "How did you get connected to those guys?" Right? And all through golf, right? It's amazing the doors that open in life, and I was very fortunate in that. My younger years, golf opened doors for me to be able to go to a great school like Baylor. Baylor allowed me to open up doors to be able to get college, scholarship, right? And then college and my golf career there and my business degree allowed me to travel to South Florida and have connections there that I never would have had probably if I'd stayed in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And but yeah, 5-6 years later, opportunities started in Nashville. Started working on projects there when Nashville was an emerging market, which is funny to think about now, considering where Nashville is. And then, started spending time back in Chattanooga. I was like, this town's changed. It's great. I love it. Quality of life, So moved back.
Thank you for your compliments when you walked in. I'm proud of the salon. So I'm referencing it's
amazing.
Once a week, more like every 3 days, I'll walk through and I hear someone saying, "Yeah, I'm moving here from Texas. I'm moving here from New York." Of course, you get like the Michigan because we have the Volkswagen people that are in the automotive industry.
Yeah.
Valker's been huge.
Yeah.
For people coming in for jobs, in Cleveland. And I think we're running like 2.7 points, maybe 3 points higher like the national average because of what we're getting from reloads. And we're a destination at this point. And you're contributing to the, our destination appeal for people to come to Chattanooga. Have you thought about, we've got all these people that are coming in and you're going to leave this sort of landmark project. What do you think, like, when people look back in 10 or 20 years, they'll say about the Bend project after it's completed?
Yeah, I hope to say the same thing, that I said earlier about the aquarium, right? It was a game changer for me, right? The opportunities that the jobs, the entertainment aspect of it, some of the other really cool projects that we're working on there now, open doors, right? Open doors for future generations. I think, the jobs really gets me excited, right? I mean, that's, we take care of about 180 businesses every day in Chattanooga, Tennessee, across our portfolio. Now that's from single office users to big government, institutional, Fortune 500s. But, from the job recruiting aspect, from folks moving here, right? The hope is that when people come to our market, they see this beautiful city. They're like, hey, let's move there. Hey, let's move our business there, right? But we're, when you think about where the folks are coming from, we got a lot of folks coming from the West Coast, a lot of folks coming from Chicago, Midwest, 75 corridor, right? What are the things that they're used to in those markets that we don't have here, that we can implement here in Chattanooga to attract them and keep them here, right? And so the Bend, we're talking to retailers and things like that aren't in Chattanooga, that are in Atlanta, that are in Nashville, that we're trying to bring to the market. And most of what we're doing is not just selling the project, we're selling Chattanooga, right? We're selling Tennessee. And, it's an easy sell right now, to be quite honest with you. But we need some more of those Fortune 500, some more of those corporations. I use the example sometimes of, I've spoke at the airline summit with the mayors and, when we're talking about getting more direct flights here, that's huge, right?
It's a struggle.
It's a struggle, especially, but the airport's done a great job with it. I mean, you go there now, and some of the direct flights that we're getting, you hear it every week now. Hey, direct flight to Chicago, direct flight to Miami. Whether or not we eventually become a hub of Atlanta's airport, right? And we get the high speed rail and stuff. 10 years from now, that could be a thing, but. These jobs, it's that you can't just cast a net and hope, a fish swims in it, right? You got to specifically target some of these big employers, right? So I think about like an REI or North Face or somebody like that. Their branding coincides with Chattanooga, right? But they may not know where Chattanooga is on the map, right? So you got to specifically target those guys, go after them and sell them on Chattanooga. Why Chattanooga? Well, the Bend is an opportunity zone. There's a huge incentive to buy real estate and create jobs in an opportunity zone. You've got a no income tax state, or proximity to Atlanta, Nashville, quality of life, workforce, 2 universities in town. All those things are tools that we use to attract these folks. So that's a lot of what we do, when we're developing these projects is working with incentives. I mean, I was doing it yesterday. I was with a company from out of town in Savannah that's looking at one of our industrial facilities, and we're talking, they're talking to the chamber, they're talking to the mayors, they're talking to the state about economic development. They're wanting to know where their workforce is coming from because it's a problem in Savannah, right? Again, it's all connected, it's all interconnected.
So give me 2 or 3 companies that people would have, like you said, REI. So what are some companies that people would correlate with that you think would be ideal for Chattanooga? They could take advantage of the Bend.
Yeah, when you think about our internet speeds, right? You think about quantum, right? With the first private quantum computer coming to downtown Chattanooga, that's huge. So I think tech, right? I mean, why not? We're a clean, green, scenic city. Our branding coincides a lot with the Facebooks, the Googles, the Microsofts of the world. I mentioned some of the outdoor apparel folks. When you think about that day trading, right? I mean, we've got the world's fastest internet, 25 gigabit, infrastructure right now in place. Why would we not go attract some of these day traders that are, big companies that are day trading on the stock exchange that are sitting in New York right now with latency? And hey, we can tell you if you get a millisecond faster timeline, in day trading and stuff like that. And so, some of those different companies, but again, they're not here, right? I mean, yeah, we've got Volkswagen, we got Bacher, we got Amazon, we got a lot of these jobs,
Manufacturing.
a lot of manufacturing, but we need some more corporate Fortune 500s in our city, and it's a great city to be in. We just got to specifically go target those guys and say, hey, here's our top 10 prospects. Their brand coincides with our brand. Let's go sell them on.
So I grew up, we moved out of Florida when I was 9. Dad was military, got transferred. There's no use for an attack pilot when you're not trying to blow up tanks. You know what I mean? So it's like he had his MBA, so they sent him to Washington, D.C., and he presided over, contracts for people that make planes and helicopters and things.
That's cool.
And it was pretty cool. And so I remember when we were in Northern Virginia, and I remember when like Veritas moved in, and outside like McLean, I think, where we had like these software companies were coming in. So Northern Virginia kind of became like this little hub for some publicly traded companies, and it changed everything, the types of jobs, like you just mentioned, the high-speed rail, along with the metro in that area, which is one of the greatest public transportation networks that I've ever seen. I've been in New York and Chicago, a few other places. And it really helped change the growth and development. And now everywhere from Washington, D.C. to Dulles, there was farmland when I grew up out there. Yeah. Right? You talked about Udo, and there was nothing. Like, there was nothing in between Northern Virginia and Dulles. And like now, you can't build a porta potty, right? Yeah. But a lot of that that growth was from those large companies, publicly traded, but tech specifically in nature. I never thought about a tech company coming in Chattanooga and being like, we're going to set up shop here. Yeah. It would be that would be fascinating to have like a major publicly traded, something that you saw on the NASDAQ or the American New York Stock Exchange, and be like, this is where we're going to be. Yeah,
and why not, right? I mean, when you think about all the advantages we have for your quality of life, affordability compared to where they're coming from, right? Yeah, I mean, why not Chattanooga, right? But it's making them aware of it, targeting them. I mean, one of the industries we're working on right now, which is really cool, and I can't say a whole lot, but it's the film and music. I'm working with a group of folks to attract entertainment here, and it's already here. We've had folks like, Bryce, who wrote the film Night Swim, right? And he wrote that in Camp House, right? Signed with Universal. But when you think about Chattanooga, where we're geographically located, you've got the largest film industry in the world now in Atlanta. And you've got the largest music industry in the world in Nashville.
And we're right in the middle.
And so what do we have to offer them that they can't get in Atlanta and they can't get in Nashville? The world's fastest internet, right? So with a lot of our manufacturing, the fact that there's no downtime, there's no latency. When the power goes off, it comes right back on, right? I mean, that's a big deal for manufacturing, but just not just manufacturing, right? The entertainment industry, right? So what if we partner with the Tyler Perry Studios? What if we partner with the Capitol Records in Nashville? We become their back of house here. We make movies here, we make films here. That's a whole new industry that we can bring to our city, but we're a geographical anomaly that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. So let's capture that, right? I think when you think about film, music, when you think about tech, when you think about, as I mentioned, some of the day trading and some of the financial institutions that can benefit from our internet speeds. But that's our delineating factor. What EPB has done with the gigabit infrastructure and now with quantum, it could be a game changer for our city, period. And I think that's the most attractive thing that I've seen that we can use to attract some of these Fortune 500s.
I wish I could recall his name off the top of my head. And we spoke about Andy Peters before we got on. And I know Andy's working with a gentleman who's bringing like inner city kids in to create, I forget the name of the nonprofit, but it's here in Chattanooga where they're trying to give these kids an opportunity with producers to, explore their musical talents, give them access to resources, mixing boards, different things, instruments, so that they can write. And they're doing it here. Like I think they went up on like Lookout Mountain, had a weekend where they were like, let's just try and write some songs and let's try to create something here.
Yeah, I was there, and it was on Signal.
Wait, it was on Signal. Okay.
It's Kessler Kaufman and Dynamo Studios.
Okay, Kessler. Right.
Yeah, and Kessler's a great guy. You should have him on. He's the team he's assembled, and he's the brain child behind all of this. And like I have a lot of different concepts pitched to me, all the time,
nonstop.
And I've learned to never say no, right? Because it's amazing what I don't know every day, right? And that was the kind of experience I had when Kessler and I first met. We were already talking about, we'd already heard that, hey, we need an amphitheater in downtown Chattanooga. We're missing a big market there for the music side. And Kessler opened my eyes to the industry and said, hey, look, not just that, but what if we actually made, records here? What if we actually recorded here? What if we could do films here? And so, we've traveled to many studios together, both music and film, and the team he has put together are some of the most famous people in the world, in the industries. And one of the gentlemen, again, I want to be careful about name dropping, but he's being inducted to the Music Hall of Fame on June 12th next week, right? And just incredible. He has a camp on Signal Mountain. He had 70 artists and producers and everything applied to this thing, and they ended up taking 20 something. But there'll be a Grammy that was written on Signal Mountain, which is really cool.
How cool!
But these guys, they had this camp, and people came from all over the world. From Australia, from Austria, from London, Miami, New York, Chicago, the best of the best, Philadelphia, in their industries. And many of them never have been to Chattanooga, Tennessee, right?
Didn't know there was a Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Didn't know, right? And ironically enough, I was in Orlando at his studios, existing studios, a couple weeks ago, and he's working with a prolific artist, that's in from London, and he's telling her, hey, we got to go to Chattanooga, Tennessee. She's like, you mean Nashville? Where's Chattanooga? He's like, no, it's cooler, it's better. They've got beautiful mountains. And she's like, yes, take me to the mountains, let's go. And so we have this camp, and I'm telling you, everyone that came here fell in love with it, right? They fell in love with this city, and that's what happens. Again, we made a movie here with the same group. It's done. It's filmed here in Chattanooga. We used one of our existing warehouse buildings, and they built a stage, and they filmed on Signal Mountain on some property back there, and Sean William Scott was in town, Stifler from American Pie. And, we're sitting there having a conversation, and he tells me, I got a 3-year-old daughter. I'm living in California. Forget that. I'm moving here. I love this place, And so that's what happens, right? If you can get people to this city, they fall in love with it.
We've got some mid factor.
Yeah, we do. And why not? I keep it, why not Chattanooga? That should be maybe our slogan when we're talking to some of these companies is, what does yes look like, right? What gets you here, and why not? And so, but I think that's a huge industry that we can attract. We're a geographical anomaly, as I mentioned. That doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. What's happened in Atlanta and what's happened in Nashville, and all the folks that are leaving the West Coast now, leaving Hollywood. Hollywood is becoming Atlanta and Nashville.
Tyler Perry did a huge thing down in Atlanta. He bought that, I think it was a Navy base that he turned into basically kind of like an incubator for people to come in. And a lot of people credit him with the move for the Hollywood of the South, which is what I know that's what Atlanta calls them. I think they say that there's 365 days out of the year, someone's filming a major movie in the city somewhere around Atlanta. And what Kessler's doing could be one of those things with music that could happen here.
Yeah, absolutely. And when Tyler Perry, I think, was the start of it, and then And then when you look at what the Cathy family does and Chick-fil-A family does now with Trilla Studios down there, I mean, it's incredible. They've built these studios and now they're building a city around it. It's 45 minutes outside of Atlanta. But when you go there, it's incredible. I mean, Marvel's there, everybody's there. You know, and of course they've got some serious firepower behind them with the Cathy family, but it's been a tremendous success. And Savannah, Savannah, they're making movies there. I mean, so Georgia has some really great incentives to attract, and now Texas too. So one of the gentlemen that's part of our group that we're working with this film and recording studio concepts on, builds these studios all over the world. He's building Ryan Redhill studios and so on and such. But at the end of the day, he has some studios called Trilogy Studios down in Dallas. They were just successful and get legislation changed there for $500 million worth of incentives to bring industry there as well. And so, you can do localized incentives. So, the county, city, you could say, hey, look, we're going to create a film incentive to attract those jobs here. But they're jobs that don't currently exist here, right? And let's face it, not everybody's going to be a doctor. Not everybody's going to be an attorney. And, what Kessler's doing is identifying those kids at a young age. And hopefully changing their lives for the better forever. And, a lot of the artists that I've talked to, I know nothing about the industry, right? Other than what I've learned over the last year or so dealing with Kessler, but, and his amazing team that he's put together. But, a lot of these kids, they're developing these talents as early as, third, fourth, fifth grade, like me with golf, right? And so, if you can identify them early enough and say, hey, look, I know you're sitting in math class and you're working on, you're writing songs or you're missing beats or something like that. Maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you can get into this program and, hone your skills and work with some of the best in the industry. And you'll never have to experience poverty again, right? So that's what he's doing. He's working with a lot of the children that, maybe have not grown up in such great circumstances. He's finding them at a young age. But it's not just, when you think about the celebrities, they're the one percenters probably as well, right? But it's the lighting crews, right? It's the technicians, it's the carpenters, it's all the folks behind the scenes that are part of this industry. So yeah, I mean, I think the more diverse our economy can be, the more opportunities we have for kids growing up to explore their options, to develop their skills. I mean, everybody has talents, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent, folks like Usher didn't have the ability to hone his skills and stay in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He had to go to Atlanta.
That's right.
And so
Samuel L. Jackson,
right? So we got a great talent base here, and it's not just one industry subset. I think so. The more of those opportunities we can provide through jobs and education for our youth, the better. Right? We don't want to be focused on one industry, right? We saw that in Charlotte, what happened with the banking collapse in 08, 09, right?
Oh, yeah.
With Bank of America and everybody else. I mean, when it goes bad, it goes real bad, right? So if we can be healthcare, if we can be automotive, if we can be entertainment, if we can be tech, great, let's bring them all on.
So it looks like AI is going to eliminate a lot of jobs.
Yes.
And, if you look around at like basic accounting, anything that H&R Block can't handle, I mean, there's going to be something out here pretty soon that's going to not make any mistakes. It's going to be linked to the IRS code, and it's going to give you a stamp that says, hey, that you're good. You send this form to the IRS, and you can go ahead and pay. And there's other service jobs that'll be replaced. Like I worry about, people that are in like low-level financial planning.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things where like we can know with 100% accuracy that you can be replaced and you don't have to feed it. You know what I mean? You don't have to, it's a program that's going to be extremely efficient. And so a lot of things are moving towards vocation. Like my son's at Silverdale Baptist, and they're built in a beautiful new building. And the focus is on providing some additional class space. There's going to be some athletics, but my buddy Taylor Hasty, who's the high school headmaster, has talked about they're committing to having a hair school, and we want to be part of that growth and contributing to that. But they're going to have real world jobs that you can leave. And so my daughter just graduated and she's headed off to Alabama next year. She got a scholarship, so I'm Roll Tide. I mean, and I never thought I was going to say that, but for out of state tuition, I'm like, yeah, Roll Tide. Anybody wants? Yes. But when I went to her graduation, one of the things that caught me off guard was the number of people that were going straight into vocations. And so when you cross the stage, they announce like where you're going to school, and they show all of the scholarship opportunities. Of course, you want to see the accolades. I want to know, all the things that you've accomplished. But some of them were like to the electrical union.
Yeah.
2 or 3 of the girls were going to a hair school, and I was like, heck yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, some of them going into the military. One was going to be an officer going to OCS. And I thought that was super cool. But there was, one of the gentlemen that was on the golf team with my son is like, Cole's going to the workforce.
Yeah.
That's what he said. So Cole's going to the workforce. And I'm like, hot dog.
That's awesome.
Because it's not, the 4 year is not what it used to be. And you might be worse off when you get out, depending on, how much the AI, the speed of change.
That's right.
Right now.
Yeah.
Is, it's nauseating. I've got 2 other guys, and we have a very small full stack digital media agency, but it's primarily to take care of like the companies that we have. We do a little bit of outside work for other people, but every day we stumble on like some new solution and it's saving us like hours or days to getting projects done, and it's a lot to keep up with. And we were all ChatGPT Pro like Friday of last week, and now we're transitioning to like almost being exclusively Gemini because of the new features that they're rolling out, and that could change again in 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's interesting that as a society we are kind of rolling back to slightly more traditional, workplace roles as solutions moving forward. And I'm all for it. I don't think my son will go to college. I don't know. He's very happy. He's working at Northern Tool right now.
Yeah.
And he's got his pack outs in the back of his car. He looks like he's ready to pull over on the side of the real estate, the side of the interstate and build a staircase or something. You know what I mean? Like and I don't know that he wants to sit in a classroom for 4 more years.
That's awesome. I think that's great. I mean, we're real time right now on construction jobs. We're paying electricians, plumbers, HVAC guys. We're paying these guys more than we're paying attorneys per hour now.
Right.
And you got a workforce, baby boomers that are retiring, and there's nobody there to replace them. Right? Supply and demand. And so why not? Why not go to a 2-year trade school, become an electrician, make 6 figures, as a young person coming out of a 2-year school, and then work in that job for 4, 5, 6, 7 years and start your own business, right? And so and again, as we have all this failing infrastructure all throughout our country, right? Those jobs are going to be in high demand. They're not going anywhere, right? And I don't think AI cannot replace that, right? And that skilled labor, that skilled workforce. And so I'm big on that. I'm big on the vocational, on the site job training. I mean, we have a lot of those companies as tenants, and I hear it time and time again. Oh, if I can hire 5 more guys, if I can find 10 more guys, if I can find 12 more electricians, but they're not there. Right. And so I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that there are younger folks out there that are thinking that way. Our parents said, hey, go be a doctor, go be an attorney, go be this.
That's right.
And, come out with $100,000 in debt out of your 4, 6, 7 year degree.
So you go make $1,800 at your first golf tournament.
That's right. And so, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's great. I think those jobs are going to be in high demand for a very, very long time. And some of the most successful people I know own businesses related to those industries.
So let's go golf and circle back to electrical. Thomas and Paul are buddies of mine. I see Thomas quite a bit, but then I'll sneak in to see Paul because he's more of a technician, just slightly analytics, and I just enjoy talking to him. Yeah. His brother was a big athlete at like South Carolina. And but the whole reason why those guys are there at Choo Choo is because of Adman Electric, and then buying that, making it a project, so an entirely different business. Yeah. Where and it's like who has he touched? Who is, because oh God, the pancake girl, I cannot think of her first name. Brooke, yeah. And so she's, she kind of cut her teeth at Choo Choo, and she's in Thomas as a role model and was part of her success and going on and to play golf. But some people have come through there and have made careers actually, and their lives have been changed because of an electrician who said, this is a pet project, and what a fabulous use for that property, because there's electrical lines in the back. It's like, what are we going to put here? Let's put a golfing academy. Yeah. I mean, nobody cares. We're hitting the ball. Every once in a while, I'll hit one of the power poles, and the things or whatever. And
Yeah.
but it doesn't matter, right? And so what a tremendous use. And anyway, I think East Brandon Road, it's very accessible. This guy's doing great. I'm happy for
Sounds a great guy.
Thomas.
Yeah.
So how did '08 affect you in your business career? And let me tell you my story for a second. So I passed my Series 7 in 63 and 99. And so whenever you saw the big real estate run up in '05 and '06, like people were secretaries and working part-time as real estate agents because they were trying to go on a lunch and then they were showing for a home because real estate was so hot, like you couldn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like the second you listed something, people were overbidding. And so there was like this insane, well, it was the same thing in 99.
Yeah.
And at the brokerage firm that I was at, they started in 92. Well, the market went up every day from 1992. Bill Clinton came into office and said, the economy's stupid. And then you had the tech bubble bursting. AOL was splitting like every 3 or 4 weeks. And, it didn't matter what you bought. You could have thrown a dart against a dartboard and it was going to go up. And I met my wife the day the market peaked. March 10th, 2000 was our first time we met. And so love life is going like this and career is starting to go like this.
Yeah.
And at the time, people were jumping out of buildings and committing suicide because they were selling naked puts against tech stocks that there aren't even, like Sun Microsystems gone, right? Like Facebook's in their headquarters, and Mark Zuckerberg talks about that all the time. Do you know why we're here, folks? Do you know why I never took down any of the old Sun Microsystems? Because I want to be reminded of what can happen. You can't be too big to fail.
That's exactly right.
Right? But it was eventually, that was the start of me thinking about, like, did I get in the right industry? This massive event that affected the entire world. And it determined my value on any single day because no matter what I did and what I had been trained, after that point, when the market peaking and then it's starting to fall out in the sky, like my name was mud because I was the financial advisor, and this was unprecedented. When everybody at my firm, all they knew was the market going up every day.
Yeah.
And a lot of those guys had been teachers. The vice president for the firm left being a principal in elementary school to take a Series 7 to come, you know what I mean? And it's like they didn't know what adversity looked like, and that was true adversity. And so shortly after that, we moved back to Chattanooga, and I get on UBS. I'm underneath, Susan Johnson, and cut my teeth in like comprehensive financial planning, where we're not. I mean, I was at a trading firm. We were doing principal trades with options, like hundreds of thousands of shares, and that I had no business doing. And this was just more holistic.
Yeah.
And so, and I had another event that the UBS liked me so much, they sent me to New York City on September 9th, 2001, so that I could see. I saw the second plane hit the World Trade Center live from a mile, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to hair school. I'd had enough, and there was another pivotal moment. So inside, this 2-year period, 2 of the worst events that could happen in finance happened. I'm like, I got to go do something else. And so when I hear you're down there and you're starting to get started in '05 in real estate, and you're getting ramped up, and you're young in your career, and you've got these aspirations, you're meeting like Mr. King, right? My appetite's between 50 and 100 million. Well, those are huge. That's a huge event. And then here comes this thing that nobody saw coming. So how did it impact you? How did it change your career? Is there anything you're doing different today because of 2008?
Everything. It's quite literally. Again, I was pretty fortunate. I look back at, you go back in time and you say, hey, look at these pivotal events that have happened. Where was I at that time and how did it affect me? And I think everybody in the real estate industry in '07 remembers the Lehman Brothers collapse.
That's right.
And I vividly remember it. I was working a deal with one of our hedge funds that we worked with. At the time, it was called Lucadia National. And Lucadia was a big multi-billion-dollar fund in New York. And I was always on the deal side, right? I was pretty good. I was a bloodhound. I was good at finding deals, right? And I think some of these hedge funds liked the fact that I had a southern drawl, was from Tennessee, not from New York, and you never saw me coming, kind of thing. I vividly remember '07 Lehman Brothers collapse. I remember one of the guys I used to work with sitting in the car driving around and said, "Well, that's it. That's the end of that's the end, right?" And you think about that statement, and at the time I was like, "What does that mean?" I'm still young. I'm still new in this industry. What does that mean? The end. Again, I think in industry and in general, especially in real estate, you got to be a chameleon, right? So at the time, yeah, we're looking at resorts and we're looking at secondary home markets, and we're looking at projects in the Carolina mountains and things like that to do a lot of high end residential development, secondary homes. Well, that went away, right? If you can't afford to pay your mortgage on your existing home, the secondary home market's non-existent, right? But then we flipped, right? We were fortunate enough to have these financial institutions that were forward thinking, and these hedge fund managers said, okay, that's fine. We're going to start buying distressed projects. We're going to start buying distressed debt. What does that mean, right? And so, we put on our different hat, and quite literally from '07 to 2013, all we did was focus on these projects that were, second and third generation projects. Whether they had partnership issues or financial issues. We started buying a lot of distressed debt, so I get the benefit of seeing all these different asset classes, right? Industrial, mixed use, land development, worked with some of the production home builders that were sitting on all this inventory and negotiating deals to buy all their lots and land bank them and sit on them. And so, I got to see a lot of really small developers make one or two fatal flaws and learn from that, right? And learn what not to do, which is a great way to learn what to do, right? And so, so quite literally from '07, everything flipped. Everything changed from my perspective of real estate and how I looked at it. It only takes one mistake in a series of events to kill a project, right? Whether it be financial, partnership issues, this, that, and the other. And so, really, that's what I've based Urban Story Ventures off of. Value add, opportunistic real estate development. You make money on buy, not to sell, right? You got to buy it right. And so, but across all asset classes, right? I learned a little bit to be dangerous about all of these different industries, whether it be industrial, manufacturing, whether it be retail, hospitality, so on and such. Because of what happened in '07, '08, I got to see all these different projects.
So much of what came up in your profile was about your ability to rehab, and not just take like a raw piece of land and construct something. When I was teaching downstairs, and with hairdressers, I'm like, if you get a girl that comes and sits on your chair and she's got virgin hair and it's down to her butt or whatever, I'm like, that's the easy part, right? I mean, you have this empty palette. It's like, what do you want to do today? You know what I mean? And then my question is, can you repeat it? Like, whatever you're going to do today, it can't be so complicated that you can't reproduce it when she comes back in 6 or 8 weeks or however long it's going to be. And also, what are you going to do when somebody comes in here and they don't have enough hair to do what you want to do or they want to do? What if it's been messed up by somebody else and you have to work with whatever you have? But it's basically a rehabilitation project. Like, you don't have all of the tools that you want or the resources that you want. And so I guess what you're telling me is that 2000, out of necessity, you guys had to go into a rehabilitation and figure out how to go and make money without having like this raw piece of land, or, we're just going to tear down this one building and build something else. We have to go in and figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, that's right.
So all dogs have fleas.
Yes.
And I didn't talk to Ken about with the West End, with the West End, that gold building. One of the contractors was a client, actually. It said that he just estimated. He wasn't sure. He said, I think we could have built this 1.5 times for what we spent on it.
Yeah.
But because we were trying to preserve the gold building, and that was our commitment, the cost was X plus.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you go in and decide, is this project worth it? And what's the algorithm look like to stay inside the budget and find all the fleas and make sure that you guys can come out with a project that meets all of the standards, like the people first best use? Because you're not just like, hey, how can we turn a dime on this?
That's right.
But you're trying to stick to a thematic approach with what you've promised.
It's hard. I mean, you got to be selective, right? I mean, we probably look at 150 projects a year to do 6, on average. And so you got to be selective. But I also think that, the ones we've done around town, for example, like King Street that I referenced earlier, again, it was in a great location. The bones were great. But it ultimately comes down, can I make the numbers work, right? And so, I was taught early on, never fall in love with a project. It's hard to do, especially with projects like the Bend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I look at a project, I say, okay, what can I buy it for? What's my basis look like, right? What is it going to cost? And then, of course, in that process, while we're figuring out costs, we're trying to come up with a vision, a plan, right? Fortunately or unfortunately, I have the worst ADHD in the world, and
You might have the second. There's more squirrels in this room. I'm telling you right now. You might be number two. I'm just telling you.
if you talk to the folks in my office, I mean, it came up again yesterday. Right, wrong, or different. I think again, we're placed in positions in life, for a reason, and for me, I could always see the end game, right? Even when I played golf, I would play the hole backwards, right? From a course management perspective. And so for me, I look at the projects the same way. I say, okay, what can I do with this project? This didn't work, right? This went wrong. But what can I work with here? Like you were comparing it to hair, right? It's like, hey, somebody walks in, long hair, virgin hair, as you put it, and say, okay, well, what do you want to do with this? We can do anything with it, right? Well, sometimes you're limited. Sometimes there's the opportunity. What you envision doesn't happen. It presents itself, right? So with King Street, for example, it was a building built in 1913, built like a German tank, right? But there were issues, right? Concrete, it takes 100 years for it to cure, so there was rebar falling out, and things like that. It had a wonderful basement that was flooded. It looked like a dungeon, but no windows in the building. And but it had great bones. Originally, we were like, hey, if we built some condos over here, what if we did that? And then at the time, we're like, look, maybe we do some office, maybe we do some retail, maybe we do, and then her end side that I partnered with said, hey, look, I got this Moxie concept. It's it was the third or fourth Moxie in the country, by Marriott Hotel.
Just come here.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna bring the good people.
Yeah, great people, and so her end in the hotel. I took the vision of the building. I said, look, there's a building in Atlanta called Pot City Market. Again, developers aren't the smartest people in the world. We learn from each other, and then you see something work, you try to replicate it. And so, hey, that looks good. Let's do a version of that, but add this, right? And so King Street was that. You look at some of the windows that are at Pot City Market and some of the exposed brick, and so we put in 100-something windows, right? We couldn't have done that today because of construction costs, right? I mean, that was pre-2020. We started that project in 18. Had we started it in 2021, it would be there.
The premium would have eliminated your opportunity to make it profitable.
That's right. We used historic tax credits on that helped, make it pencil there too. And so, but it was great. I mean, we brought in a lot of new jobs. That building was full with, at least up during COVID, right? So we had companies come in that filled the building up on the office side. I went and recruited good fellows, wise guys from Lexington. I thought it was a cool concept. Went up there, sold them on Chattanooga, Tennessee. They opened up their first Tennessee location here in Chattanooga.
So you targeted them and they came.
Yeah, targeted them and they came. I sold them hard on Chattanooga and King Street specifically. Finally got them here. They were going to Knoxville and then they were going to Broadway. But anyway, they came here. It was their first location, and they opened in July of 2020. And during the middle of COVID, and they had their grand opening. We're all in masks and everything, and had their best month ever. Any location they've ever had. Yeah, I mean, it's been a fun project, but again, had construction dollars been what they were today, that project would have been cheaper to build new. But for me, I think, just finding those special projects that have great bones, great locations, that can be reimagined, I think that's what we're really good at. I think trying to find the best in these projects and help them tell a new story.
My daughter was a theater. She's a theater major. She's getting a business and theater double major. She doesn't want to waste any time in college. She's in some program where she can major in both and get her MBA in 5 years. I'm like, do you want to smell the flowers? I mean, there's just supposed to be a fun time. Like, you don't have to just be, no, I don't have time for that. Okay. But anyway, to speak to that, the theater program at Silverdale was trying to pick a play because there were one of the initial initiatives was like, well, there's an award that we want to get, and I think it was a jewel award. I could be wrong here, but and they were trying to think about the end in mind, but the ultimate goal was to win an award, which I totally understand. How cool if you're trying to attract people because of your theater program if we win this award, and I think it complicated things thinking about it in terms of the executing this play to get the award. And all of this, I'm tying this back to your real estate. Hickson and Sophia's won awards for their developmental use. I mean, those properties were recognized for their excellence. Were you shooting for the award, or was it just a byproduct of how you do things that led to the outcome and the award
Yeah.
came as a byproduct?
Yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, we're not trying to win awards, I think at the end of the day, we're just trying to do quality projects. And I think, the end result is a reflection of that, right? I think,
Clearly.
yeah, I mean, in everything I've ever done is it's always, give 100%, right? And do your very best and your best version of that, or why do it? Right. So at the end of the day, when we look at these projects, yeah, I mean, are there cheaper ways to do things? Yes, absolutely. Are they going to be lasting? No. And so I think, and again, taking the mentality of who's going to support these projects, right? At the end of the day, it's most of the projects we have are now in Chattanooga. It's Chattanooga's, right? So do a quality project that improves the area and that you feel good about. And yeah, if the awards come, great, but that's never a thought. That's never been a thought, I promise you. It's not something that I've ever wanted to do. But yeah, we've had a couple projects won some awards, which is recognition of the hard work, which is great, but that's not what we're in it for at the end of the day.
Let's circle back for a second. The high-speed rail, in net positive for Chattanooga, yes or no?
Yeah, I think net positive. I think with everything, there's complications, but anything that takes the demand off our interstates, I think is a good thing. I mean, we experience it now. I mean, I live on Signal Mountain and work downtown and have projects in Brainerd and Hickson and other places, and just the commute time alone to get from here to let's say Saudi Daisy or Hickson or Signal Mountain even. It's a lot, right? Because of the bridge cut, and then we've got more infrastructure happening, which is going to be phase 2 of that work for the state. And so the interstates are going to be an issue forever, with all the logistics and the trucks and everything. And so I think anything to take the demand off our interstates, I think rail is. I mean, you look at Europe, right? That's how everybody gets around there.
That's right.
Rail, and so I think. We're a young country, and I think rail is our future. I mean, they just built a high-speed rail from Orlando to Miami that cut the travel time in almost half. They're building one from Las Vegas to LA right now, which is, again, I think going to be a great thing. And so I think, yeah, if Chattanooga can become a hub like we used to be with the Chattanooga Choo-Choo with rail, that's a game changer for us. Anywhere that makes it, any way that we can become more accessible to get people in and out of here, right? Especially when you think about the tie-in to Atlanta Airport, right? Imagine if you can be in Chattanooga, Tennessee, or in Atlanta, and your flight gets delayed, and you can hop on high-speed rail and be here in 30 minutes to get on a flight here, to direct flight.
30 minutes, wow.
I mean, why not? At the same point in Nashville. Now, all of a sudden, those employers that are in Nashville, I think of Oracle, say, hey, look, why don't we open a satellite office in Chattanooga, Tennessee, right? It's more affordable down there. Can't afford real estate in Nashville anymore. Let's just go build a satellite office down there. We're thinking about expansion here. Let's expand in Chattanooga, because guess what? We got more opportunities for employees there, and it's only 30-minute train ride away. So I think high-speed rail could be a game changer for us. I really do. I think the tie-in between DC, Nashville, Huntsville, Knoxville, Atlanta, I think long-term is just an amazing opportunity for our city. Yeah, there'll be problems with it, right? But, but I think long-term, that's look, it's changed Europe. I think it's easier to get around Europe than it is in the United States. So I think, and part of that is because of high-speed rail. You see it in Asia now too. So I think it's coming, and I think it's going to be another long-term way to travel.
Do they still want access to our water? And if they do, is that a problem, yes or no?
Meaning Georgia?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they do. I think they've been trying to change the state lines forever. Whether that happens or not, probably not, right? I mean, you just imagine the legalities of that.
Public outcry.
Public outcry. So I doubt that will happen. But that's one thing that we do have, again, that we're blessed with, is an abundance of water and natural resources. And having TVA here in town, I think is a great thing. So, I mean, look, there's so many things that when you look at Chattanooga and you start going through the boxes of why is Chattanooga a good place to live, why is Chattanooga a good place to invest, why is Chattanooga a good place to set up shop with my company. I mean, it's back to why not, right?
So Atlanta's exploding, has exploded.
Yes.
Nashville is exploding, and I mean, I think now I've got a location up there, and I think when you get in about 45 minutes out, they've clear cut everything on both sides of the expressway. I wonder how those farmers that are still close to Nashville that you can see on 75, like how are they making it with property taxes? It's amazing to me. I mean, they're obviously sitting on their retirement. That could be generational wealth for whoever comes along, because some of those are within like 10 miles of proper.
Yeah.
Do we risk losing anything by being absorbed, or because of the massive growth in the identities with Nashville and with Atlanta being right in the middle?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to be cautious about that, right? And from a real estate developer standpoint, you got to do smart development, right? Infrastructure is a big one. We got to make sure that, we don't outpace growth with our infrastructure. And that's going back to, taking less demand off the interstates, right? But we're a national park city now too, which is really cool. And I think that's a big selling point for Chattanooga. So I think there's a balance there you got to preserve. I think about the farmers. I mean, like, look, there's certain things we have to have as humans, and one of them is food. So we got to keep that farmland, and it's a shame what's happening with some of it being bought by China and some of these other places. Anyway, we won't go there. But at the end of the day, I think Chattanooga is unique in that we have these mountains, these rivers, these lakes that determine where development can't happen. They're not going anywhere. Lookout Mountain's not moving. Elder's not moving. Signal's not moving. The Ridge Cut, it's there to stay. The Tennessee River.
Not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere. The Chickamauga, all the preserved land that TBA has done a good job preserving. Moccasin Bend National Park now, right? The hospital's going to move, which I think is a great thing. So again, I think it's a balance, preserving the nature, because again, it's a big draw for our community. We're some of the best rock climbing in the world, some of the best hiking.
That's right.
Kayaking, a co-ed close by. I think it's a balance, right? We've got a project up on Signal Mountain that we're doing. We've got 540 acres up there that I'm partnered with Green Tech, and we're going to develop. And it's but in a smart way, right? I mean, there's a lot of anti-development conversation about Signal Mountain, and but with the natural resources we have up there, meaning the beauty, the land, so on and such, it's the mentality of, hey, I'm here, I don't want anybody else up here now, right? But we can do it smartly, right? Low impact development. Yes, you build houses. Okay. Residential units. That increases the tax base. Signal Mountain's having an issue right now, paying for sidewalks, right? Keeping fire stations open.
Really?
Things like that. Well, why is that? Because, we don't have a lot of retail up there. So you're missing out on the sales tax. You don't have a lot of development happening up there. So you're missing out on the property tax increases. And so, there's a balance. Do you want a bunch of production builders up there building on every tract of land? No, absolutely not. But do you need development to sustain those basic needs that we just talked about? Absolutely. And so I think there's a balance there. I think Chattanooga, I don't think we'll ever be in a situation where we're overdeveloped just because we're a natural topography, which is different from the sprawl that you see in Atlanta, because it's flat and you can go anywhere, right? And in Nashville, it's the same.
No
right?
physical limitations.
No physical limitations. And Dallas, I was in Dallas recently. You want to talk about urban sprawl? That's the definition of urban sprawl, right? But again, your infrastructure cannot outpace your development. That's a key factor. And then our national topography, I think, limits where that development's going to happen.
I spent a lot of time in East Brandon. My whole life is out on this 3-mile stretch of road. And when you drive back down a Gap Road and you start heading towards Appleton, that area, if there's a square inch somewhere, they're building on it.
Yeah.
And I know that we've been, from an inventory standpoint, we've been at a deficit for a really long period of time. Mm-hmm. It seems like that builders are working aggressively to get to what I would say is saturation.
Yeah.
And I worry about inventory because we had a crisis in 2008. Now, it was a banking crisis, right? Like we had bad underwriting, right? I mean, if you wanted a loan, you got it. Oh, you want to borrow 150% of your house? Let's do it, and we'll slap a HELOC on it too. I think, and I have this theory, and it's from the things that I read, the research that I do, the investing that I do, that we could be headed for another crisis in the next 2 or 3 years because of the overbuilding, Also because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they've released almost $1 trillion in second mortgages to people that, needed help getting their loans. That's kind of like taking an alcoholic and put him in the bar and be like, put a handle of Tito's next to him, like, okay, we're gonna be on the honor system.
That's right.
Okay, and it's like, I know this was an issue before, but we're gonna, just don't get hurt. Okay.
Yeah.
And so if all of those people go through and they start accessing those lines of credit and they start spending it, whether it's on cars and things or whether it's on home improvements, and they start to default on those, and then you have this massive inventory of homes,
That's right.
and there could be these defaults. I think that there could be another crisis in maybe 27 with developing. I mean, do you forecast that? Do you see that? Do you worry about it? Am I off base here?
No, I think you're 100% right. I mean, look, in 2006, I met this gentleman by the name of Himes Zuckerman, right? Himes is he's lives in Atlanta, a brilliant guy. Sold everything he owned in 2006. Then 2007 hits, right? And I'm sitting down talking to Himes, and we're at lunch, and he says, "Hey, look, we were due a downturn." Right? He said it was too good to be true. And he said, so I sold everything out in 2006. And in 2007, 8, 9, 10, what was he doing? He was going back and buying those assets that he had sold to these guys that they defaulted on. And, Himes was a really smart guy, but he said, look, there's a thing called a cycle of 7 and 3. He said, every 7 years, you have, you go back and look to the Great Depression, right? Every 7 years, there's and that's a biblical number too, but every 7 years,
yes, that's right.
You have this exponential growth, right? And then every cycles, and then you go 3 years of bad, right? And so this principle of 7 and 3 is something that I've been conscious of and make investments off of. And so in 2019, we sold the assets we wanted to sell. We refinanced everything we owned because interest rates were so low. And I thought that in 2020, we were going to have a downturn. It was just a philosophy in our office that,
Amazing.
And it wasn't, nobody thought COVID, right? But it was, hey, look, in 2007, we had this collapse, right? But we had a double cycle of good, right? We had 14 years of a cycle of great.
That's right.
And so Heim said, hey, look, if you go back to the cycles of 7 and 3, and let's say we're going to have a 7-year run, we had 14 years of good. So this downturn is going to last 6 years, and then we'll start coming out of it. And I said, well, God, that sounds miserable. We got to live in 6 years of downturn here from 2000. So if you come out of that downturn in 2013, you enter in 2007, 6 years of bad, 2013. That's how long it took for a lot of that stuff to recycle through the system. I said, okay, well, let's make an educated guess that we're going to go back to a cycle of 7 and 3, and 2020 is going to be a bad year, right? And so we did that, right? And then COVID hit in January of 2020, and never could have predicted COVID. But I think what happened with all the stimulus money, and I'm going back to a point here, when you look at all the stimulus money that came in, the trillions of dollars, I think that paused that time, that clock, if you will, of the recovery by maybe 2 or 3 years. And so,
a safety net was put out there like a cushion.
Yeah. Yeah. And so let's say that delayed things 2 years, right? 3 years. So now let's say, 2020 hits. We had a 3-year recovery time period that was based on historical data that's always been there. Let's say it's 5 years, right? Recovery time. And so then you go back to those cycles. I mean, I think it may be a little later. I think we've got a nice window, but I think 2030, we're probably looking at another huge significant event. And I think these events are going to get bigger and bigger. And I think you get a plan for them. I think, when you look at what happened in the tech crash in the early 2000s, you look at the early 90s.
Wait, 92 was that bond, or was that was the stock market crash? I don't know if that was the bond crisis or not. And then
you go 92 to 2000, right?
Yeah.
You have a 7-year window. 2000 was another collapse. And then you go back and you had another collapse in 2007. And so, when you look at these windows and the recovery times, it's you can almost time it to a watch. And so that's what I'm saying. I think, but COVID changed that time frame a little bit. And I think so. You got to look at the past, as I mentioned earlier. You got to be, as history repeats itself. And so from an investing standpoint, you're taking all these different factors in. You're reading a little bit about this, you're understanding that, you're looking at the cycles of history and financial crises and so on and such, and why did those happen? And okay, how do I plan for the next one? And so Yeah, I mean, I think, but they're getting larger, right? And I think the next one is probably going to be a pretty bad one.
Dizzy.
Yeah. So, but you plan for those things, right? When interest rates seem really, really good, that's the time to refinance, right? And they're not going to get better than 3% or 4% or 2% or whatever we were experiencing back then. I mean, I've got some loans now that they're locked in at 3.4%. The banks are losing money on them because interest rates are now 7.
Don't ever pay it off. Like
Yeah.
take out a HELOC and spend it on something. And I mean, that's
But at the end of the day, those loans mature, and then you got to factor in what that new interest rate is going to look like and how it's going to affect your revenue and your income. And so, at the end of the day, that's what we're seeing right now with a lot of the multifamily that was refinanced and developed prior to COVID. You've got these 5-year construction term loans and things like that are coming due. And the new reality of that is they underwrote them at a certain interest rate and a certain cap rate on an exit, and you can't achieve those now. And so what's going to happen with those assets? And so, there's still some opportunities out there in the marketplace for the smart investor, the smart developer, the smart business person. But I think you've always got to be thinking about, when is that next downturn going to be, and how do I prepare for it today?
the life vest that was extended by the federal government with the money from COVID.
Yeah.
My theory is that it is exasperated or is going to make the crash worse.
I
It's
agree.
kind of that theory, like you pay for every buzz,
Yeah. That's
right?
for free.
As
right?
opposed to just getting in and like taking the pain, ripping the Band-Aid off. It's like, no, here's 2 or 3 years of
Yeah.
all this additional discretionary income. Now I gotta between in medical aesthetics and the hair salon, we benefited greatly.
Yeah.
People were tired of looking at themselves on Zoom, being like, oh my God, I gotta go fix my face.
That's right.
And horror story, Jamie, we started Revive in 2018, and in February of 2020, I closed on my first laser purchase, and so I spent. It was just under $500,000, and 2 weeks later, they said we're shutting down, and I freaked out.
Wow.
I would go sit in that laser room because we were closed in the dark, and I would look at those machines, and I was like, "There's a college tuition to Yale. There's a college tuition to Cornell, to Harvard, like wherever." I mean,
Yeah.
and I had experienced panic for the first time. The whole idea of like mental health. Before that, I was like, mental health's BS. Just double down, work harder. And I was sitting in the room like, no, I'm having a panic attack.
Yeah.
And then there was serious concerns about like, what am I going to do now? Thank God for COVID. For that reason, the people wanted to fix their face, and so that I wanted to pay off. But I had a crisis of faith. Because of COVID and having to make this massive investment 2 weeks before we're going to shut down this global event. I love the 7 and 3 minute revisit. Like, it is biblical. Like there's the 7 moons. Like when you have like the red moon, I guess the red moon theory. But the 7 is a very biblical number for like reconciliation, especially.
Yeah, it's I'm a numbers guy. Like, I can barely spell my name. Like I mentioned, a little dyslexia, a little ADHD, and all that. So, but numbers, resonate with me. And again, good, nice compliment to have to doing what I do every day. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, I think we've got to look at the past and how it dictates our futures, and look at past events and how we recovered from those events. And so, but yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think maybe a little bit later, maybe 2030. But I think we're definitely due something. There's always something around the corner. It's just how we prepare for it, how we plan for it. But yeah, I mean, I think everybody in 2020. I mean, I woke up in March of 2020 and thought it was a great idea to buy a bunch of empty Macy's department stores in Florida, in Nashville. Again, because I could buy them at a value. You buy,
The numbers worked.
The numbers worked, right? And everybody else was hesitant. Everybody was scared of big box retail. I was like, wait a minute, these are great assets and great locations, and I can buy them for the land value. So let's reimagine that and figure out what we can do with them. But yeah, I was nervous. I was like, man, is this a good decision to sit here but I always go with my gut, right? And I've always been a contrarian, that I always go the opposite direction of what everybody else is doing. Just because I believe, hey, if everybody else is doing it, then
I should be doing it.
should be doing it. And so same way, like everybody else is out, leveraging their homes and getting second mortgages because interest rates are great and this, that, and the other. I want to go the opposite direction, right? Yeah, I mean, I think that mentality has worked for us. I started buying industrial in Chattanooga in 2014. I couldn't get a loan. Nobody wanted to give me a loan for industrial. Why do you want to buy industrial? Well, the value's there, the location.
And the club was wide open.
And the color was wide open. The Bend, what is now the Bend, the first acquisition we made out there was actually an industrial building. It was built, in the early 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s. That's still there to this day. That's now full. But I was getting $3 a square foot in rent. Now for that same space, we're getting $10.56. And now everybody wants to do industrial, right?
You can't find industrial in Chattanooga right now.
Our vacancy is between 1% and 4%. But it's the same way on the office side. I have conversation with people about office all over, New York and DC and Atlanta, and our vacancy is, about the same, between 1% and 4%. I think it's 4%. I think during COVID it never got below or above 5% vacancy, which is astounding to think about. But we haven't had any new inventory. Right? Nobody's built a new office building in downtown Chattanooga forever, and so spaces have stayed full. It's supply and demand again. To your point, when people start building all this residential and we get overbuilt, what happens to that when there's a collapse? Well, it just sits there and gets recycled and reabsorbed. But it's all incremental. Chattanooga just hasn't had that huge inventory on the office and industrial or really any segment. You could argue multifamily now. And I think that is the case now. You have a lot of multifamily in the market, and some of those folks aren't hitting the rental rates that they wanted to hit because there is so much inventory that came on all at the same time. But the rest of the industry here in Chattanooga is strong, very strong.
Is TVA still trying to sublease? I know when everybody sent people home and they didn't need the office space that we're talking about, like subleasing hundreds of thousands of square feet.
Yeah.
Do you know if they're still doing that? If they're still trying to fill that space?
Yeah, they are, and so is Blue Cross, right? TVA, they did an RFP that we participated in for a new office building, which I guess is still part of the discussion point. It's the Bend, but at the end of the day, that building is problematic, right? I mean, it's antiquated, if you will.
Sure.
It's 1 million square feet. It's got, a lot of it's not usable any longer. I think the days of cubicles are pretty much gone. I mean, everybody's trying to figure out, the same thing. How do I attract my employees back to work? How do I create an inviting workplace? And now that's starting to look like, having a daycare at the office, right?
Basketball court,
pickleball, whatever. We see it with our logistics teams, right? You go there, it looks like they're having a party at the office.
I'm all for it.
Which is great.
Let's put a golf cement and call it a day. Where's full swing? Let's go.
No, it should be fun, right? And so you spend more time at work than you do home in most cases. And so why not create an inviting environment from a landlord perspective or from an owner perspective, or so at the end of the day, I think we'll see more and more trends like that of how do I attract my employees back to work? How do I make it more enjoyable for everyone? And so I think TVA is trying to figure that out, right? How do I rebrand? How do I attract my employees back? Blue Cross Blue Shield, they're seeing the same thing with them, right? They've got that big, beautiful building up on top of the hill, and they still don't have folks coming back to work. Well, when you look at the way that was built, it was nothing but cubicles. My wife used to work there, and we started having children, and we started to figure out, hey, look, your salary is basically going to pay for a nanny.
Right.
So once we had our second kid, it absolutely did not make more sense. But approximately 65% of their workforce is female. And so now that everybody's worked from home, they figured out, hey, wait a minute, I don't have to pay for a nanny. I can spend more time with my kids. So Blue Cross Blue Shield, why not think about putting a daycare in your facility up there, specifically for your employees?
Smart.
So that the employees can be closer to their children. They know they're safe, secure. And it also entices everybody to come back to work. Because I think at the end of the day, we're social people, right? We crave that interaction. Yes, can some people sit in an office, in a home office, and not have that interaction? Yes, but I think that's the small majority, right? We'd be living in caves elsewise, right? So I think we're social people. We crave that interaction. There's a lot of things that happen when you get smart people together in the workforce that can't happen when you're working from home. But can some folks work from home? Absolutely. but the majority of the population, absolutely not. And the mental health side of that is not healthy as well. I think that's been a big thing that has come out of COVID is, we need this interaction. We need this connectivity. We need to see our friends.
Connectivity.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the workforce is coming back. It will come back. It's just going to be different, and it's going to evolve and continue to evolve, which it needed to.
Well, I'm 99% female, and I can't have a daycare here, but we built next to one, so we did the next best thing.
Yeah.
So I want to get into the intrinsic. We're going to start to kind of close here. We're going to get to kind of who. Well, what does it mean to work at USV? If someone's coming on board and it's like, why USV? What if I'm looking for a place to work where it's like, why am I choosing USV?
Every day is different, right? Every project's different. I think we're making a difference in the community. We got to make money, and we got to make it makes sense, like any business. But I think at the end of the day, that's why USV. I think everybody on our team is drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak, that, hey, this is our ultimate goal. Yeah, we know we're going to do great projects. We know we're going to leave a lasting impact in the community where we're developing. And we know that we're going to leave it better than we found it. But yes, we also have to make it pencil. But I think that's why USV is I think everybody at our office understands our mission is greater than just being profitable. The projects that we find are fun. I mean, they're fun to work on, right? I mean, I love learning about new jobs and new industries and, talking to the Kesslers of the world and the folks I was with yesterday from Savannah and learning about their jobs and their industry and what they're doing, right? And so I think, everybody in our office will say, hey, we show up to work every day. It's exciting. It's different. The projects are different. We're doing good in the community, and that's what it's about.
So if I'm an executive somewhere and you're trying to expand your team and you call me and say, Jamie, I think you should come to USV. Mm-hmm. And I say, why Jamie White? Because you're my direct report. What are you going to tell me?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my response would be is that I'd have your back, right? I've got a lot of folks that work with me, work for me, that are a lot smarter than I am. I can't do what our HVAC techs do, right? And we've got the best HVAC techs on the circuit, period. I can't do what our property managers do. I can't do what some of our leasing folks do. I can't do what our accountants do. And I think at the end of the day, my job is to empower them. My job is to support them, to give them the tools they need for success. And I think, when I'm talking to potential hires, that's what I tell them. Hey, look, you're going to grow here. You're going to learn here. You're going to do things that are different than you've ever done before. And you have 100% support from me, the president, and from every team member. I mean, we're looking at hires right now, and everybody in the office, everybody in the C-suite has input. I'm not making the decision. If everybody doesn't sign off on it, we don't hire them, period. Because I'm so conscious, especially having had some bad experiences with wrong hires, of that office dynamic and that culture, that corporate culture. I want to create an environment where everybody enjoys showing up every day. They're excited about the work we're doing. And I think that's why USV.
Thanks for the plug.
Yeah.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Single biggest golf influence?
Oh, man. Probably my dad,
Yeah?
I mean, I played all sports growing up. I mean, I was dunking a basketball in 8th grade and, loved it. And, loved baseball and soccer and, played some football and all kinds of stuff. But, golf was special. It's that time I got to spend with my dad. He taught me the game at a young age. He didn't force it on me, but just by watching him enjoy it, I think, got me into it. And I think, that's probably my biggest influence. He gave me the knowledge that I needed to have for success, but never forced it on me. And, I think between he and my uncle and having that encouragement and seeing that I had an ability and a gift, and having them help me nurture it was probably the biggest influence. I've never been one for celebrities, I mean, I mentioned Greg Norman was kind of my childhood guy that I liked, but.
And you got to meet him.
Yeah, I got to meet him and, I've been fortunate enough to meet some other folks, but, well-known names in golf and play with them and all that. But, they put our pants on every day, just like we do, one leg at a time, right? And so, but yeah, there's a special bond between a dad and a kid. I think getting to spend time on the golf course together, you learn more about someone in 4 hours on the golf course than you do, you know, 4 months in a boardroom.
That's right.
So yeah, probably my biggest influence.
Single biggest real estate influence.
Man, yeah, I mean, I look at some of the people like the Debbie Kings that crossed my path, the Big Shans, I think there's many, Zelman Jacobs that, was one of the guys at Acadia that went to York, and some of these guys that just were good dudes, that realized their mission, if you will, was to impart knowledge on others. And, I think about that daily too. It's like, hey, my job is to impart knowledge onto the next generation. And, I had many, many people, Himes, Ed Robson, these guys that just took time out of their day to help a young kid out. And, Thunder Thornton, he's another one. Thunder was a big Tennessee booster and,
Sure.
Still doing prolific developments right now, a great guy. But, was kind enough to give me time as a young kid and, get started in the industry and impart knowledge on me. So, yeah, there's, I think there's been a series of people that have helped point me in the right direction and tell me not know what to, don't do this or avoid this pitfall and been willing to help.
I love the commitment to not being an experiential learner. There's something that those are memories you don't ever forget. You're like, I don't want to do that again. But when I'm teaching downstairs, I'm like, okay, you guys can take my word for it, or you can go and learn your way. But just remember, if you make a mistake, you're going to have to fix it right then, okay, on someone's hair. And by the way, your next one's here. So it's up to you. You can do it your way, okay, and you can experience it, and you'll never forget it. Or it's like you can avoid the pitfall, and your day can go be stress free.
Yeah.
It's entirely up to you.
Yeah.
Some of the things that I hear that you talk about, I hear some more in Buffett. Do you have, like, for example, like, be greedy when people are being fearful and be fearful when people are being greedy? That's I live by that, like, in terms of how I'm making decisions. Like, what's going on around the world? Do you have an influence, maybe someone that you haven't met, that you go to for either inspiration, knowledge, for color?
Yeah, I read a lot. Sometimes, some of it's useless, some of it's not. But I read a lot. I try to be very diverse in what I read and what I follow online and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I think Warren Buffett. How can you not respect the guy and what he's done? In industry and in business. Say what you will about the Donald Trump, but he has been a successful businessman and has written many books about real estate and so on and such. And so you read a little bit about some of the stuff he's done. You read a little bit about Buffett. You read a little bit about some of the private equity guys and the banking industry and this, that, and the other. And then you take a little bit of knowledge from each one of those guys that you gravitate towards and that you, like I said, always go with my gut. And I'm like, man, that makes a lot of sense to me, or no, that doesn't make sense to me. And I don't think there's one specific person I'm like, I agree with everything they say, right? But there are bits and pieces from different business leaders, different political figures, different industry types that I'm just like, hey, look, that resonates with me. I can take a bit of that and mix it with this. It's like a chef that's preparing a dish, right? It's like, hey, I like to cook chicken this way, right? Well, what if I tried that? Or what if I tried this? What if I tried that? And so you experiment. And you take a little bit of knowledge from here and a little bit of knowledge from there, and then you put it all together, and hopefully it ends up to be a great dish, right? So I think that's kind of my mentality when, trying to learn, trying to grow, trying to further my career is, is there one specific person that I'm like, hey, yeah, everything he does is the written word? No. Yeah, I mean, I think you got to have some faith, and you got to have, the willingness to learn, to be wrong, to grow from that. And, I'm still learning every day. So.
Pretty student of the game.
Yeah, that's right.
So behind every great man is a surprise mother-in-law, okay? Which means there's got to be a greater wife. What kind of role has she played in your success, and where is she on the team?
Yeah, I mean, she's she's everything. Like, I don't want to get choked up here or whatever, but I was late in getting married. I was in my, we got married in 2012, and so 13 years now, which is hard to believe. But we started dating in '09, and she's a little younger than I am. So, but I didn't start having kids, and we didn't get married until later on in life. And so, I'm 47 now, which is hard to believe, but I've got a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, right? And yeah, so trying to stay in shape and coaching all-star games and soccer and football and all
You're
that.
still picking up a 3-year-old.
Oh yeah, still picking up a 3-year-old. He's a big boy, but I love my boys. I love my kids. That's my number one priority. That my wife, she keeps everything together. She's very intelligent. She has a sales marketing background, of course is a stay-at-home mom right now, which is the hardest job in the world. Can't say enough about that. But between coordinating all the sporting events and she has to hear all my drama when I come home from work, and she always listens and always gives positive input. And so she's amazing.
That's great to hear.
We couldn't none of this would be possible without her and the sport that's there.
I love that. Well, and we'll leave it there. Jimmy, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
No, appreciate your time.
And when as the project develops, if there's we maybe have you back and get a follow up and see if there's another big project that out there for Chattanooga.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I thank you for your commitment and for the growth of the city.
No, thank you, sir. Appreciate it as well.
Thank you, sir.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, man.